Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has killed the House of Mouse's Disney Kingdom, at least so far as its special taxing district. And that happened officially today in a firehouse in what was formerly the RCID, where Ron DeSantis signed the bill into law, renaming it the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District. Around the same time this bill was signed, an early picture of some of Ron DeSantis' memoirs to be published today on Tuesday as you're watching this video came out. And in them, Ron DeSantis talks very candidly about his meetings with Bob Chapek when all of this story started, confirming a great deal of what we've been telling you here since day one. Stay tuned. Let's get into it. Renegade Online. All right, folks, welcome back to another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And of course, if you are like one of the many folks watching this video, not yet subscribed to the channel, please take a moment, turn that little red subscribe button to gray, hit that like button, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Got a lot to discuss, pro, legal. Guys, we've been covering this story for almost a year now since it started. And lo and behold, everything that we've discussed, especially you, Andrew, turned out to be true. 100% of it. Every bit of it, everything you predicted was going to happen, happened exactly as you said it would. You said a year ago when this started that Disney would be able to get this taxing district back if they applied for it in 2 weeks. They would just play under the new rules.
Right.
That's exactly where we are. And people still misunderstand what's happened here. They still think that DeSantis caved or something like this. People think that Disney is right back to where they were before. Nothing could be further from the truth. We had a big press conference today from Ron DeSantis inside of the formerly known as Reedy Creek fire station, signing the bill into law.
Yeah. I've been in that fire station, by the way. I've been there.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's amazing to see this. And Pro, you've been covering this as well over on that Park Place and on your new YouTube channel. And we've talked about this, I don't know how many times now.
It's funny how just telling the facts works. It in the long run, it really pays off. The people who still think that that this is a loss for the opponents of Disney, they're delusional or they're delusioned. One or the other. Take your pick.
No question about it. And what I want to do today, gentlemen, I think, and for those of you who aren't familiar with every little nitty-gritty detail of what has happened to this point, I'm going to leave a link below this video to several of our previous videos on this topic. You can go back and watch and get caught up. But I want to play. I have cut the press conference down today to about 6 or 7 minutes. It's just Governor DeSantis talking. I think there's a lot of red meat in there that gives all of the details that people need to know of what is really changing here. The 1967 pact with Reedy Creek, I mean, that was based around this premise that Walt was going to live and build the experimental city of tomorrow. It didn't happen. It became Epcot, but there's no city. It's just a big silver ball and a new Guardians of the Galaxy ride in the World Showcase and a food festival, which is great. But it's not what they promised to get that 1967 pact, which let them do crazy stuff and basically be free from any type of legislative oversight from the state. That is all being washed away now. And on the same day, not coincidentally at all, some tidbits of Ron DeSantis' memoirs being released tomorrow for sale at bookstores, I'm sure nationwide, talking about his personal interactions during this entire thing with former CEO Bob Chapek. Mm-hmm. Basically, once again, confirming everything that we talked about up to this point. Let's go to the video here.
Today, the corporate kingdom finally comes to an end. There's a new sheriff in town, and accountability will be the order of the day. So as all of you know, we made the decision last year to go in a different direction with respect to how Disney is governed. And since the 1960s, they've enjoyed privileges unlike any company or individual in the state of Florida has ever enjoyed. They, of course, controlled their own government right here in Central Florida. They had exemptions from laws that everybody else had to follow, and they were able to get huge amounts of benefits without paying their fair share of taxes, and even racked up $700 million worth of municipal debt. So we had a little bit of a tussle last year over school legislation, and Disney came out against something that was really just about protecting young kids and making sure that students are able to go to school learning to read, write, add, and subtract, and not having a teacher tell them that they can change their gender. And I think most parents agree with that. But, you know, that was only a mild annoyance. I think that what we came to realize after that dust settled on that was you clearly had a movement within the corporation itself, of course, Burbank, California-based elements of it that said it's their job or it's their goal to inject a lot of this sexuality into the programming for young kids. And I'm a dad, 6'4" and 2, and my wife and I know parents throughout Florida, we want our kids to be kids. We want them to be able to enjoy entertainment, school, without having an agenda imposed upon them. And so if you're going that way as a corporation, those are not the values that we want to promote in the state of Florida. We want to promote the safety of our students and the rights of our parents. So we had this situation here that was basically indefensible from a policy perspective. How do you give one theme park its own government and then treat all the other theme parks differently? And so we believe
because, by the way, hold up there real quick.
Go ahead.
So just so you know, the other theme parks tried. It's not that they didn't try. Oh, they tried.
They didn't just try. You helped them try.
Exactly. I was there helping them try. We were there lobbying the state senators. They're like, we're not doing that again. We're like, wait a second. We did what for Disney? They didn't even know what they did for Disney. It was done so long ago. It was done generations back. They said hard no to Universal. They're not doing it for Busch Gardens. They're not doing it for Legoland. There's no Lego City. You know, there's none of that. There's no Six Flags City. None of that. All that does not exist. Disney was the only one. And really, when you look at it from an equality basis, right? You know, are you really offering the same thing? Why should Disney have something that no other similarly situated entity is allowed? And by restoring it to what it is, this is the same as any other entity can do. In fact, the other theme parks we're thinking about when they expand, when they grow, whether they should form special districts, but normal ones under the regular rules that apply to all 1,700 special districts in Florida and counting, because there's more being formed every single week in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And just I'm not interested in doing a political take or advocating for Ron DeSantis or any other political figure. That's not what I'm into on YouTube. But I'll tell you this, just from a nonpartisan viewpoint, this is a brutal takedown of Disney. It's brutal.
Yes. And I just want to remind folks real quick that maybe don't remember, Andrew, an attorney originally from Florida, and what was his specialty? His specialty was special tax districts.
No. Wait a minute. The forum expert said. The theme park vloggers, they all told me otherwise. I don't know about this.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm the only person who's qualified within the state of Florida to really talk about this. Yeah, so probably, don't trust me, the guy who literally is the person who specializes in this. The most experience doing this when I was over there, the most experience across the table from Disney. By the way, I was saying this on my stream earlier. I was on meetings with Reedy Creek where we would be following up, and they would CC Disney executives, non-Reedy Creek members, on the emails. People who had no business being in the Reedy Creek deal were getting involved in the deal. So I'm negotiating not just with Reedy, but with Disney. I've seen that. I saw the puppet status a mile away, and they felt so secure and so immune with it, they didn't even hide it. They didn't even hide that you had to negotiate with Disney if you wanted Reedy Creek to approve anything. They were so entrenched in Central Florida, they never saw this coming.
Yeah, no
Andrew,
fear.
Let me get your opinion real quick, Andrew, on this. I'm curious what you think. Do you think that Bob Iger, when he pushed Chapek into this position, Do you think that he knew that it could come to this and that this was a chip worth losing in order to dislodge Chapek from his position?
I don't know whether he could have planned this, but I think when you go down this road, the outcome was inevitable. What's the Thanos line? You know, it's inevitable, right? Yeah, it was going to happen. When you go down this road of allowing your employees to control the company, allowing essentially mob rule, it was always going to go there. There was going to be this political element that was going to light the spark. I don't know if they could have said that. Iger could have said, hey, Chapek is going to do this, and it's going to be specifically the parental rights and education bill. I don't give Iger that much credit. However, I think he did hand it over knowing there was going to be a moment where Chapek was really going to screw up.
I think that's possible. I look, and we're going to get to that story here in just a bit because it's certainly worthy of being covered because, again, it was no accident that specific segment from the book was put onto Fox News today just a couple of hours literally before DeSantis was doing what we're watching right now. All right, so let me continue on here.
That was not good policy. We believe being joined at the hip with this one California-based company was not something that was justifiable or sustainable. And so we said we were going to do something about it. And so now we're basically, Disney's going to be treated like SeaWorld is treated or like any of these others. And that's really the fair thing to do.
Let me say something real quick because I saw this come up a couple of times on Twitter. People keep asking, why are they comparing it to SeaWorld? Why not Universal? Why not this? Great question. The simple answer is this, is that SeaWorld opened its park gates less than 2 years after Walt Disney World did. Walt Disney World opened October of 1971. SeaWorld was summer of 73. So the comparison is there because it's one of the older parks in the state right alongside Walt Disney World. And it did not, being formed around the same time, did not get any kind of special treatment that Walt Disney World did. That's why he's bringing up SeaWorld.
So I'll be signing
the geography, by the way, the geography is not missed there either. If you're driving down from downtown Orlando to go to Disney, like many people do, driving from the suburbs, you pass SeaWorld. You see the whale tail every single time you drive by on the way to Disney World. Every single time you see it, and you say, oh, SeaWorld's right there. Disney is over there. You see them, right, in the distance from each other. Why is this one and this one treated differently right there geographically?
Momentarily, and that will officially end the self-governing status here in Central Florida for Disney. My signature will also end Disney's exemption from the Florida Building Code and Florida Fire Prevention Code. It will end Disney's exemption from state regulatory reviews and approval. It will end Disney's secrecy by finally ensuring transparency about what goes on in this area. It will ensure that Disney pays its fair share of taxes. It will prevent local governments dominated by leftist politicians from using this situation to raise local taxes. Remember when we first said that we were going to go in a different direction and change the status quo, local politicians, particularly in Orange County, were saying that that would mean that the debt of Disney would get dumped on their taxpayers.
They was lying.
They would have to do services, and it would cause major property tax increases for people in Central Florida. Now, I rejected that. A lot of media reported that that would happen, and I said that will not happen. And so even though I would like eventually the local governments to just take this, I was not going to put taxpayers at risk.
And just to be clear, take it from an administrative standpoint to where the state does not have to continue to bother appointing its own people that at some point, maybe down the road, if that what DeSantis is saying, if he feels like Orange County and Osceola County can get their stuff together and handle it, great, we'll talk. But until then,
And I did not trust them.
And by the way, it's not common for this. It's common for multi-county special districts to be appointed at the state level.
Yes.
Because you're not going to get counties to agree. Counties often have many points of friction between them, where they're not in alignment, not in agreement. So there's always that underlying tension. So when you try to get them to agree about a special district with, billions of dollars invested straddling both counties, there's potential chances for huge fights over that, particularly since Orange County is going to say, well, most of it's in Orange County, only a little bit's in Osceola. But Osceola is going to say, well, we want equal voting rights. So, you can see how this could break down easily if you put it county versus county.
Yeah, and just like you and I talked about, Pro and Andrew, all three of us have said this. All this special protection from 1967, all of that Disney pixie dust and magic has been completely dissolved. I mean, it really has. They will now have to submit to other regulatory bodies, to legislative action on taxes, which are coming. That is what this bill opened it up. They did not open the doors for the state legislature to levy, say, ad valorem taxes on Disney property in order to, as DeSantis says specifically before even this, to help support other areas. But I think that's where he's going in this next segment. But that litany that he just gave about Disney will no longer have this, will no longer have that, they will no longer be exempt from this, exempt from that, exempt from the other thing. Those were all the special protections they had under that 1967 pact that are now verboten.
Be able to handle this.
And the one he mentioned, he skimmed over it. But when he said transparency, that part of that is sunshine laws.
Yep.
Something that Florida has insane transparency. All of our government documents are open. Reedy Creek has been the sole government entity with closed books for the past 60 years. That to me is insanity.
Andrew, that is a huge point. That is an amazing point that only Disney inside Florida escaped the sunshine. That, I mean, and it's so few people.
Because they were grandfathered in. They were grandfathered in.
Yeah.
I have a suspicion this is not going to be embedded in any of the Disney news sites that were telling the complete opposite. I just don't think they're going to put this whole thing on there.
I don't want to name any names, but I'd make a joke right now, but I'm not going to do it
at this point. So it's under state control, not local control. They may be able to negotiate something in the future, but right now there will be no additional tax burden on any Floridian in Central Florida or otherwise. And in fact, for the whole decades that this has been in effect, you have infrastructure feeding into the theme parks that were paid for by all the citizens of Central Florida, and Disney really got a free ride on that.
This is key.
Now they can be taxed for that. So if anything, it's going to reduce the tax burden of people in Central Florida. It also imposes, my signature in this bill will also impose Florida law on this area, just like it's imposed on Universal Studios and SeaWorld and all these other places. And this bill and the structure that we've created in this bill will ensure that the municipal debt that's been racked up will be paid by Disney, not by Florida taxpayers. And
very specific. The bill goes out and calls it out. It says specifically these bonds are valid. Any edits, any changes, any amendments they need to do to make sure these bonds are valid, boom, they can make them. The biggest argument they had, the Goliath they had, completely slain, completely tossed aside. All of those articles, all those other lawyers who were specialists on this that wrote that, oh, the bonds. They did not know shit about municipal bonds. And I called it, said it was going to happen, and boom, there you go. The debt is handled.
Yeah, it was already caught, as you mentioned before, Andrew. That issue with not being able to, spread the bond debt out to other areas that were not within the original RCID district was already codified in state law. They just restated it in this. Let's make it very clear. As he said, Disney will pay the bonds. Period. So
they were always going to.
Exactly.
The other interesting thing too is that Disney is not fighting this at all, which is what we said. They don't have jurisdiction to fight it.
They have nothing.
But
we're standing. Yeah.
One of the things about that though too is Disney still maintains those two cities. I'm assuming the two pseudo cities,
Bay Lake.
But I think that's now a liability to Disney, and that is yet another area of concern for them because all Florida has to do is start peeling back that onion and say, "Now wait a minute. Are you saying this cul-de-sac is a city? Oh, how funny. Let's have some fun with that one next." So Disney really is on the bottom of the mat. They don't want to get up.
No.
It's very interesting because they actually have a specific provision that they are allowed, that the district is allowed to override any action of the city of Bay Lake and the city of Buena Vista, those two little mini cities in between.
That's going to make a couple of double wides really angry.
And we have that, and we'll talk about that here in just a bit. But we'll get. I mean, that's we have the bill, and I know you're reading from the bill right now,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we're almost done with this. Let me scroll through this a little bit more. We've got about 2 minutes left, and then we're going to polish it off with everything.
This is what accountability looks like. This is what standing up for Florida taxpayers in the rule of law looks like. And I'm really happy that the legislature was able to do this. You know, last year when we did the initial, people were saying the debts, all this other stuff. We said, we're going to take care of it. Don't worry. We're going to take care of it. We got time to think about the best way to do it. And I'm confident that this is a way that is going to vindicate the best interest of the state of Florida. So Disney loses self-governing status. The state of Florida is the new sheriff in town. So
that's the second time he said that. He's making it abundantly clear.
Yes.
I'm going to put my John Hancock on this piece of legislation. That'll make it official.
I love this
And
part.
so just look at your watch and you'll know at what time the corporate kingdom finally came to an end.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. All the firefighters are getting raises too, by the way.
Yeah, I bet.
So all through the Reedy Creek era,
This is from the Q&A.
there would be major projects that would be done in Orange and Osceola counties that would basically feed in to Reedy Creek, but they wouldn't pay any of it for it, even though they're probably the most valuable piece of property. So there's specific provision in the bill giving the state under the control board the ability to assess the taxes so that they're pulling their weight and so
There you
that
go.
they're paying their fair share
Huge
with respect to
change.
infrastructure projects. Also, just the board is going to ensure that Disney's paying its fair share with respects to the value of its property, which obviously they have not been doing. So it's going to be good for taxpayers.
Which,
average,
by the way,
the
this is
working folks in
massive. If
Central
you want to pause
Florida,
there.
I think you're going to
Yeah.
get more bang for your buck on infrastructure now.
That's getting
Okay,
close to
the
end of
Orange
it.
County property appraiser. First of all, I'm not gonna say I'm a huge fan of the Orange County property appraiser because they are absolutely wild. They actually for a while were assessing companies for the value of their brand as part of their property valuation. So the same piece of property if it's a Hilton versus a El Jose's Motel, Hilton as the brand was valued more because they've got a Hilton brand on it, right? So I can only imagine what the valuation on Disney is going to be when they start actually paying their fair share. It's
Oh my
gonna be
God.
insane.
It's gonna be nuts. But here's the thing, and it's not like we're going, yay, taxes. No, and I want to make this abundantly clear to everybody watching this video. I am yay. Whatever the rules are in the state of Florida, everybody needs to be treated equally and fairly and play by the same rules. Disney, for over 50 some odd years, has not had to play by the rules that everybody else has had to play by. And there are lots of special taxing districts out there. Andrew helped form a great number of them in the state of Florida. Andrew helped issue a lot of municipal bond debt for these special taxing districts in the state of Florida. That's why Andrew's here. So, but you don't know what you're talking about according to Twitter.
No idea.
He doesn't have the expertise of the Twitter the Twitter experts out there with 2 followers each. He's just nothing compared to that.
I'm sorry.
And that's
Oops.
really
This is the
how it
last of it.
should be. I mean, these are, decades of subsidies and benefits that have really accumulated to kind of this one powerful company. And now we're basically just on an even playing field. And what's good for SeaWorld is good for Disney. And that's just the way it's got to be.
And that was the end of the Q&A. Well, there was another couple of questions, but they didn't have anything really to do with Disney about some criminal statutes that just passed and things like this. So, gentlemen, take it away.
Well, I want to play a game and toss this to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So let's evaluate the damage that this did to Disney with the stupid decisions that they made. All right. So let's assume that Walt Disney World continues to operate for 50 years minimum.
Yes.
I mean, surely it'll do longer than that, but hey, let's make that assumption. How many millions of dollars was this mistake, was this position they took worth if this is applied to 50 years of operation going forward?
I think you're switching an M to a B.
I know you're
Because
you're going to the B's.
When you factor in inflation, when you factor in tax benefits, when you factor in fees, those things add up. When you're talking about impact fees, other things they should have been paying throughout the years, we're talking with a B over 50 years, not with an M. A million is a cool Tuesday. I was part of settlement agreements with Disney that were for a couple million. I'm thinking this is something that's going to be in the billions, particularly with the projects that they want to see within Disney. I mean, we're talking about Disney that wants rail connections. We're talking about Disney that wants massive highway improvements, that wants to build out, different alternative transportation methods, which may involve it getting involved in, eminent domain, which they're going to have to conduct fairly and transparently under the modern laws of eminent domain, not their archaic 1960s shit. So this stuff adds up. When you add this stuff up, the accrued damage to Disney is in the B's. This is something their accountants are going to have their heads spinning trying to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're talking about just put the property taxes aside for a second, that, additional taxes they're going to pay outside of just their own little fiefdom. That's all they've been doing for years, is basically paying property taxes to their own self-controlled government, the RCID, which would then basically do the bare minimum. And there were other great parts of this press conference from John Shurey, who was there, the president of the Reedy Creek Improvement District Professional Firefighters Association, which will now be getting a new name, of course. And he was there, and we don't have time to play all that, but let me just tell you, he was none too much of a fan of the RCID. He sat there and he went on a tear about how piss poor Reedy Creek, or how piss poor a job that RCID did with maintaining the fire department, vehicles and equipment that was largely in disrepair. This all according to Mr. Shurey.
I'm shocked. I can't believe that those mobile home parks could not afford a upstanding and outstanding fire department.
Yeah,
it's almost like Disney was planning on bringing in other government municipality fire support
and making other taxpayers foot the bill if they had. It was
all just
disaster.
a facade.
Yeah,
it was all a facade.
But that being said, I mean, you had other speakers there. A 19-year veteran employee of Disney, a mom who was a 20-year of annual pass holder that was tired of all the woke stuff, and how and there was a lot of different discussion there, but certainly, I mean, it seems like everybody involved in this, at least on the boots on the ground level for Reedy Creek, obviously not the former management of it, is actually very happy with this change. Yeah,
I think that the Disney, aspects of their infrastructure are best viewed as the facade, right? When you go around Epcot, right, if you see the front side and the back side, right? Germany doesn't look like Germany on the back. Neither does, China or India or any of those other places. It's the concrete facade. It's the fakeness. And, they've got the shiny little fire truck they parade out to look cute, and have Mickey riding on top. But that's the only operational fire truck.
That's the nicest fire truck in the RCID.
The rest of them are responding in the back of their personal F-150s to incidents on the property. They're getting in their personal cars and they're riding out there because they're more reliable than the corporate equipment. So, I mean, I think we're going to have a higher level of safety even within Disney itself. The thing is, Disney is going to be paying its fair share for them. They can't go back and have Reedy Creek performing projects, which are really private projects, which if this happened in the city of Orlando or in Kissimmee, they would have at best a private public partnership where they'd be sharing costs. For years, they've gotten away with that, with things that solely benefit Disney as public projects. That scrutiny is going to be on now, and those are going to be lost, which is why I say billions with a B now, not later.
And the state legislature alone could step in tomorrow, because this was part of the bill. This was something that they really couldn't do before. But the state legislature could step in tomorrow, pass a bill, which, folks, don't be surprised. That was a special session of the Florida legislature that just happened. That was not the regular session. Regular session's coming up. Don't be surprised at all if you see a bill coming right down through that regular session that says, here's the new tax on Disney property by the state to pay for all of the roads between the Orlando airport and the Walt Disney property.
Right.
All right, so I've got a question real quick. So with the new rules that are in place, can they move the borders of Reedy Creek District, which will now be renamed, at all? Can they now consume, let's say, the Golden Oak area, or can they bring in residents of Florida who would therefore have voting rights that would sort of dilute the power that Disney has?
Excellent question. Can they? Technically, but they're not going to. Here's why. If you want to contract the boundaries, that's actually very easy. That's fine, because you're not adding property that wasn't previously within the district. That's fine. They can do that. They can contract fairly freely. When you want to expand, you typically need either the express consent of the landowners, or a referendum. So you would need some sort of mechanism of consent, whether it's through a referendum or through the specific consent of the landowners. If they're going to bring in a populated area, let's say Golden Oaks, or let's say they were going to reconquer Celebration, right? They would need a consent for that. They would need the landowner's consent, and you never can get that. That's very, very, very difficult to get. Even to get a handful of people to consent, even one property owner to consent, is often very difficult because they don't want to pay extra taxes. When you tell them you're going to.
What about new residents moving into the current RCID? Is that possible?
That would be possible. So if they've held themselves out there as a place that's open for residents, well, then perhaps they have to make it open for residents. Perhaps the scrutiny will be put on the city of Bay Lake and Buena Vista. And I could see very readily those cities being disbanded because they don't actually meet the definition of what a city actually is.
There you go. I'm going to keep my eyes on Zillow for that cul-de-sac.
Oh, there you go. It's coming, baby. It's coming. And as promised earlier, like I said, on the same day, just hours before this conference, I want to bring this up real quick and get your thoughts on this as a final tidbit here, folks. Former Disney CEO privately complained to Ron DeSantis about pressure from the woke left amid the Florida fight. This from last year, the 1557 House bill in Florida that started all this stuff. And then eventually led to the Florida state legislature finally getting the political willpower to do what should have been done decades ago, especially after Disney reneged on its promise to not actually build the experimental city of tomorrow, but instead built another theme park that just took its name. And instead of having an actual thriving city, you now have Spaceship Earth and you have the new Guardians of the Galaxy ride, which is great, but that's not what Walt promised. But this here, just some excerpts from this. This is from Ron DeSantis's new book that's coming out today, as most of you are watching this video. And this is Ron DeSantis's own words. As the controversy over the parental rights and education bill was coming to a head, Bob Chapek called me. He did not want Disney to get involved, but he was getting a lot of pressure to weigh in against the bill, Ron DeSantis writes. Bob Chapek told Ron DeSantis, "We get pressured all the time, but this time is different. I, Bob Chapek, haven't seen anything like this before."
That's because he didn't know that Iger was after him.
Exactly.
He had not correctly assessed the threat quite yet.
Yeah, and what have we been telling you folks for a year about Chapek? Chapek was the guy who was trying to get Disney back more towards the center, the political center of things, to not get overly involved in politics. And it was going to be a long slog for him to try to fix things. But of course, Robert Iger never left Disney. Never even left his office in the C-suite in Burbank. Why? Because he's got a 5-year contract after his retirement to still be a paid consultant for the Walt Disney Company.
Isn't that great? Isn't that great, those paid consulting gigs? Don't you want one of those, Valiant? Those are sweet.
They actually paid Robert Iger to hang around and sabotage Bob Chapek, literally from his own office.
Insubordinate him, yeah, exactly.
I mean,
and let me say this.
And that's who started this whole mess, was Bob Iger.
So this is key for people to understand, though, because this is misunderstood in vast amounts of the media out there on both sides of the political aisle.
Mm-hmm.
People completely miss, and even the people who have leaked major stories about Disney and gotten it right, they have missed that Chapek was the guy trying to move Disney to the center, and Iger was the guy trying to move it farther to the left, sabotaged Chapek, and now is back in Disney. It's not that Disney is now going to move back to the middle because Iger's in charge. It's the complete opposite. Exactly. Iger's the wokey.
Yeah. He is, and I hope that this article, and that's why I wanted to bring this up, this article on Fox News being sourced from a book that is written by Ron DeSantis about what he talked to, about who he talked to and what they said. If this doesn't wake up some of those journalists that are on the conservative side of the media to understand that, no, folks, Chapek wasn't Mr. Wokey Woke, and don't get all excited that he got fired because you don't know what happened. Hopefully this is going to wake y'all up. Hopefully this is going to wake y'all up. Yeah, we've been telling you this for over a year.
Yeah, I would understand. I would understand people saying, because this is the one criticism of saying, like, well, Chapek wasn't the savior you expected him to be. Okay, well, he turns out, he did fail, right? Ultimately, in the end, you judge people by their results, and well, he didn't deliver, and he's gone, and he's not coming back. So not coming out of left field to save Disney. But Iger clearly exerted a massive amount of control over the company. I think Chapek was always in his shadow. And I think some of these things were just long lead lines that had been buried by Iger that came unsurfaced during Chapek's short reign of over the corporate kingdom.
Yep, he needed a fall guy, that's for sure. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us for the show today. A pleasure, as always, to have you both here. Definitely two of the most favorite guests here on Valiant Renegade, to be sure. We don't have too many favorite guests, but you guys are definitely among them, and I appreciate your time. Make sure you check out Andrew Esquire over on The Legal Mindset. Make sure you check out WDW Pro from That Park Place, on That Park Place, and on his own channel. And we'll see you guys Sunday for the live show and any videos coming forward from this point. Thanks so much. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, leave a comment before you head out the door. And until next time, folks, take care.